Hello, and welcome to part one of at least 9, possibly more. But it's only 3 parts which are going to appear in this section today, hopefully, of the Long Patrol on the Royal Navy's support for the Western Front. Now, I'm going to do 9 parts because there are 9 classes of monitors built. So, I'm not including the insect class gunboats, which sort of come up in 1915. I'm focusing in on monitors, not gunboats, although the Humber class are kind of an interesting ones. And they're actually what today's topic is to start off with. Also, I'm going to say this. There might be some delays in getting some of the videos out, mainly because I was already running slightly tired, and then I had the first part of my vaccine yesterday. I got it because of my mum and sister being shielded. They had to have theirs, and they went, and very sensibly, the NHS went, hang on, you have someone who's designated as a carer living in your home. Yes. Okay, so he goes in and out and deals with all the things? Yes. Well, we'd better inject him as well, because it's no point having him getting ill and you guys getting exposed. So, all I can report in terms of side effects is it makes you even more tired. But that could also be to do with the fact that I've been pulling 9 to 10 hours a day on the offices to get them ready. And that my lunch today was very, very bad. So, it's life in the big city. So why is this going to be 3 parts today and 3 parts probably in March and 3 parts probably in April? Why am I breaking up the Western Front and fast support from the Royal Navy so much? Well, because they're massive. Because I wouldn't be surprised if each episode today is 40 minutes. And I would not be surprised if each episode that follows is 40 minutes. Because they do so much. Also because if I spread it out more, I can have more time to do it. And the thing is, I didn't want to delay this because I wanted to do this on time, but some of the books which I've ordered haven't yet arrived. So, for example, I've ordered Reginald Bacon's Dover Patrol, The Concise History. Not his volumes 1 and 2, The Concise History, because I could get an original copy of the 1932 Concise History for actually cheaper than I could get reprints of volumes 1 and 2 in paper, and also I could actually get that, whereas the others, they may or may not have been able to get to me. It's all very perplexing. And really what we are talking about is the Dover Patrol. Now, some of these ships are ships which were built originally for other navies. The Humber class were originally going to be for the Brazilians. The Gorgon class were originally going to be for the Norwegians. And they get used. Some of them get numbers, M1, M whatever, as they go up. And some classes are actually entirely numerically based in terms of their naming. And of course, famously, M33 does still exist. And who knows? If the tiers lift enough, I might be able to go see M33 before I film their part of their particular section and actually get some video with them, with M33 without my students in it, so I could use it. I doubt it's going to be lifted. But, saying all that, it's cool. There is a lot of history which gets ignored. When I was reading through this one, Castle Steel by Massey, and a fair number of books, things get forgotten. Whole battles get forgotten. Whole units get forgotten. They're talking about the Harwich Force, but they forget the Dover Patrol. They're talking about what the Dover Patrols are getting up to, because it doesn't theoretically matter, does it? You know, we're talking about the pure naval battle. Well, a large chunk of the naval battle is about assisting the armed forces ashore, whether they're the Army or the Air Force, in terms of getting supplies. Well, the Air Force is what appears in World War II, of course. In World War I, it's the Royal Flying Corps and Royal Naval Air Service. Up until April Fool's Day 1918. But they matter. It's part of the operation. It's part of the duties. It's part of things. If you're providing cover for that force, while that force is bombarding the Germans ashore, you then have to have the Grand Fleet, or at least a portion of the Grand Fleet, out to provide cover in case the Germans decide to surge to attack that force. You probably have the Harwich Force out as cover as well, in case the German destroyers and German small ships, torpedo boats, decide to make an attack. So you have a very large operation take place. And you don't do such things for operations which are inconsequential, off the route of march, or do not matter. You just don't. You don't have the resources to waste. Even in a total war scenario, either like World War I or World War II, you just don't. So, the Humber class. And these are some of the cutest little ships you're going to see in a long, long time. And I'm going to make sure to slide, but I will also remember to expand each slide so people looking at the screen can quickly pause and read through the slide if they wanted to look at it on their phone screen. So, the Humber class. And let's do the quick expansion. Now, these are gorgeous ships, but they have an interesting history. Their history starts off with them being ordered as the Javari class gunboats for the Brazilian Navy. They are being procured to fight, well, to patrol the Amazon, one of the most complicated and dangerous inland waterways in the world. It's massive. It has all sorts of tributaries going off and all sorts of wide areas of river. So, frankly, it is no easy passage. So, whilst these are definitely not ocean-going vessels, coastal is definitely within their capabilities. And I'd like to point out that whilst they were theoretically designed for 12 knots as a top speed, the listed one of, in practice, 9.5 knots was, again, if you had a strong tailwind and a fair tide supporting you. It's fun times. They are ordered from Vickers Limited Shipyard in Barrow Furness, a well-known yard for supplying such things, and a very capable yard for supplying such things. And they are produced, and they are 1,280 tons in standard, 1,540 tons in full load. They're about 81 meters long, nearly 15 meters wide, the beam, and a draft of 1.7 meters or 5.6 feet, which pretty much means that if my feet were on the bottom of the water, on the riverbed or the seabed, my neck would be above water. My head would be above water. Top 6 inches roughly. And because I'm roughly 6 foot. Technically, we'll not get into it, but yeah. It's a nice design for this sort of job. They have 2 6-inch guns mounted in a twin turret forward. They have 2 4.7-inch howitzers. They have 4 3-pounder, that's 47mm guns, for local defense. 1 3-pounder AA gun. This is ordered prior to World War I, remember, and they're completed as ordered. And 6 machine guns. So that's a lot of firepower. And start thinking about that. Why is this useful? When I talk about a monitor, normally you expect me to talk about something like the Lord Clives or the Abercrombie class, who have battleship guns, or have retrofitted with an 18-inch gun, or this, that, and the other. Massive, big bombard tools. These got 6 inches. Well, 18 inches impresses wargamers because of the range. 18 inches impresses statisticians and quite a lot of historians. Twin 6-inch guns impress infantry which are trying to get past you up the coast. Because the 18-inch will fire occasionally, and it's like a bus coming, and if you're a fixed target, like, I don't know, a bridge, it will blast you to freaking kingdom come. But if you're a moving target, you have a goodly chance of avoiding being actually hit, or at least being able to get out of the way. Whereas twin 6-inch guns blasting away with high explosive, that's not nice. Not nice at all. And you're a destroyer running around, that's, again, not nice. It's not something you want to be dealing with. It's not something you want to be fighting. 4.7-inch howitzers, that just adds even more pain to your day. And the closer you get to the ship, the more she's bringing firepower to bear. So the more, if she gets up a river and is blocking the river, that river is blocked until you manage to sink her. And again, start thinking about it. She's a moving target. This is the age pre-tanks. This is the closest thing you have to a tank at this point. She's armored. We'll go through that in a second. And she's moving. Maybe not fast, but she's moving. You think of all the complicated equipment ships are built with in order to engage moving targets. Then you think about the artillery in World War I and the beginning of World War I. Engaging moving targets is not really what their capabilities scream. So, they're good ships. They're very capable ships. Again, think about their displacement, and then think about the fact that they have a belt of between 3 and 1.5 inches thickness. They have bulkheads which are 1.5 inches thick. They have barbettes which are 3.5 inches thick. They have a turret face which is 4 inches thick. That's a lot of solid steel. That's a weight. But there's also something which you've got to try and pound through. Think about it. What does the infantry unit in 1914 carry that's going to damage that thing? Machine gun? Nope. You might clear the exposed decks, but everyone will just crouch down and blast back at you. Especially the 6-inch guns in the turret. We can call artillery, but if they're moving, that's going to be a very fun task to see if they actually hit something. They might, but they might not. Again, cause them to fire back, but that's about it. What do we do? What do we as infantrymen do? Your only options are avoidance, really. go, oh, infantry mortars. Well, then again, the 1914 ones are not like the 1944 ones, and certainly not like the 2021 ones. There's no anti-tank missiles, no guided weapons. So they plop along. And here's the interesting thing again. They have 2 Yarrow boilers powering 2 shafts via triple expansion engines, giving 1,450 indicated horsepower. Now, why is that important? Because the whole thing about these ships is they're built for survivability. You have 2 screws, you're more survivable, because it's unlikely you're going to get something that damages both. You have 2 engines. One goes wrong, you still got the other. You have 2 boilers. One goes wrong, you still got the other. Yes, you're going to lose speed. Yes, you're going to lose stuff, but it's insurance. These are peacetime warships built. And that explains a lot of their capabilities. Although, honestly, would a little bit more speed have really upset, I don't know, the Brazilians? I have to admit, I do think possibly for more speed, they would have had to be closer to 90 meters. Possibly as much as 105 meters. Length to beam ratio. But if you'd done that, you could probably have upped the engines, upped all the other stuff. Maybe put in another double 6-inch aft. That would have been your dreadnought gunboat. Yeah. Gorgeous. Okay. So, what are their battle honours? And let me just find the mouse. HMS Humber, ex-Javary, Belgian coast and Dardanelles. HMS Mersey, currently the name of a river-class patrol vessel. Belgian coast and action versus the Königsberg. HMS Seven, again, the name of another river-class patrol vessel, and ex-Sonamos. Battle honours, Belgian coast and action versus Königsberg. There is a pattern going on here. Also, please note, yes, that is HMS Humber, who has been upgunned with a 3rd 6-inch gun added aft. Yes. Beauty knows only greater boundaries. 3 6-inch guns. Oh. But no, it makes sense. 6-inch guns make sense for these type of ships. And really, it's kind of interesting how the monitors develop. Well, monitors end up going up with the bigger guns, but some of them do not have the bigger guns. The Royal Navy very much has a 2-tier monitor system, having smaller ones and bigger ones. Smaller ones mounting these guns, which are far more useful for assisting forces which are moving along the coast, providing close-in fire, moving in rivers, providing close-in fire, and monitors which are useful for long-range bombardment and lobbing. You almost end up with, this is going to sound strange, a heavy monitor and a light monitor program. And these, by fact of being procured in the way they were, are the light program. Now, for those who read the first slide, they'll remember that they were procured through a slightly random system. And it's in small part, I think, thanks to a certain Rear Admiral Horace Hood, who served his time as secretary to the First Lord of the Admiralty of Winston Churchill in 1914. These 3 vessels were being built for Brazil. Brazil suddenly decided they didn't want to buy them. They didn't have the money, they didn't feel they needed them. There's all sorts of potential options, but they just didn't want to buy them. And this causes a problem. Because Britain doesn't want Germany to buy them, because if Germany was moving troops along a coast, they would be very, very useful. These are the sort of ships which the Royal Navy really wouldn't build itself, because it has better things to spend its money on at this time. But they also are the kid which doesn't want anyone else playing with these toys. And their theory is that they will be bought first by neutral power, who would get them out of the UK, and then they'd be bought by the German Navy. And these are useful. Their 6-inch guns make them very useful for inshore work against destroyers. And, well, one of them will even have fun that when a torpedo is fired at it, it will actually pass underneath them. So they're quite scary little ships. In fact, that happens with a lot of monsters. They have both torpedo bulges and the advantage of being shallow enough drafted. Unless someone's really, really checked the calibration of their torpedoes, they're not set to run that shallow. Their crews depend on their gun fit as well. They do. They go up and down. They can usually have 30 to 40 aboard, but they can have a lot more. They can have less sometimes, believe it or not. When crossing the Mediterranean later, they had less. We'll talk about that in a bit, though. So, this is the Battle of Ypres. Well, it's the race to the sea. As you can see, the Battle of Assine, and then you have the French and the Allies and the Germans racing to the sea, racing to build their trenches from Switzerland to the sea. The largest fortification which was ever constructed, really. I know we talk about the Great Wall of China, and that is pretty darn big. But the whole network of the trench system, I would say, makes them bigger. So the Battle of Ypres. It happens off the coast of Belgium. And it is the do-or-die struggle. It is Belgium's last chance to retain part of Belgium in their hands. Germany has taken 95% of Belgium. Every single one of their offences hasn't simply been outfought or beaten, it's been overwhelmed. They were deploying divisions, Germany was deploying armies. There just wasn't enough troops to go around. In fact, it's almost embarrassing at certain points for poor Belgium. And the Royal Navy is looking at this and going, there's Ostend and Zeebrugge. We've already lost them. Can we afford to lose the rest? Can we afford to lose Nieuport? Can we afford to lose Dunkirk, Calais, perhaps Boulogne? Well, the army's fighting its bit, but it can't be everywhere, and it's really, really fighting tooth or nail. So, what do you send to Ypres? You send Rear Admiral Horace Hood, who may or may not be commander of the Dover Patrol at this point. There is a dispute over whether or not they start fighting and then the force is formed into the Dover Patrol, or whether it's formed into the Dover Patrol and then starts fighting. Basically, there are dates on paperwork. My argument would be he is the commander of the Dover Patrol, and he's because says he's a commander from October, and therefore any ships put underneath his command, you must presume, are the Dover Patrol. That would make sense. We'll get more into Horace Hood in a bit. And this is a tough battle. This is a mean battle. This is the kind of battle which you do not want to be anywhere near, where Belgium actually takes the decision to flood part of their territory, a la the Dutch, to try and protect themselves, where they have ships doing everything but ramming themselves ashore to try and fire and provide fire support, where you have interesting accounts which vary as to whether or not how active Royal Navy parties got, in terms of whether they were just firing rifles and pistols from their ships at Germans they saw moving, or whether they actually landed to engage them. It was a hard, nasty fight. And the Humber class were at its heart from the very beginning. Their 6-inch guns made them at its heart. He had a couple of light cruisers. He had a flotilla or two of destroyers. He had other ships as well, but these were the beating heart of his force. These were the ships we could get in close and blast. And boy, oh boy, was he happy with those 6-inch guns. They were very, very useful. And they made the whole thing viable, I suppose. For want of a better word, they gave it viability. We will talk much about the heroic struggle of Belgians, and they really do a massively hard job to retain as much control of Belgium as they can. And this in no way is taking away any credit from them, because they deserve all you can give. But the firepower the Royal Navy brought along the coast to bear on the Germans certainly did push and pause the Germans at several critical moments, that it gave the Belgians the breathing room needed to do some of the stuff they did. So it's a case of the Royal Navy turning up with a lot of firepower. Again, think about it. There are no tanks. Look at the artillery in 1914. That's not what it is now. Air support? No. This is it. This is your mobile fire support. And it was kicking. Hard. Kicking very hard. And this is the guy leading them, Rear Admiral Horace Hood, one of the rising stars of the Royal Navy. He'd had postings aboard HMS Trafalgar, HMS Royal Sovereign, HMS Wildfire, HMS Sans Pareil, HMS Cambrian, HMS Ramillies. He was commander, i.e. the executive officer, of that ship when it was Lord Charles Bereford's flagship in the Mediterranean. So that's not exactly a junior career. But one interesting thing is, you wouldn't really call him a Beresford man or a fisherman. He has enough political connections of his own, thanks to, again, having an ancestor who was Sir Samuel Hood, and various other forebears who'd served in the Navy, that, frankly, he could actually rise above that and still get ahead quite happily. In 1903, he had his first independent command, HMS Hyacinth, a second-class protector cruiser. During this post, duties here, he would lead a force of roughly 754 men, including a detachment of 127 men from the Hampshire Regiment, to fight the dervishes and take a battle where they would land in heavy surf during the night and go ashore and dislodge the dervishes and take a little sort of position. At Illig. He did it very well. And that's some of his amphibious experience, which is one of the reasons why he's put in charge of the Dover Patrol, because he has amphibious experience. In 1906, he commands HMS Berwick, an armoured cruiser. In 1909, HMS Commonwealth, a battleship. In 1913, HMS Centurion, a dreadnought battleship. He takes command of her for, I think it's 3 days before he's promoted to Rear Admiral, and he's got some new flag captain assigned. And then she becomes his flagship for 3 months. So, you rather like Centurion. He served on 2 Naval Intelligence Committees during his service. He was Naval Attaché to the United States in 1907. Commander Royal Navy College, Osborne, 1910 to 1913. And appointed Rear Admiral in May 1913 and would spend the beginning of 1914, or a large chunk of 1914, as Naval Secretary to the First Lord of the Admiralty. That's i.e. the person trying to manage Winston Churchill. This is an officer with experience, capabilities, who is put in charge of the Dover Patrol to set it up. Who sets a template for what will be eventually become the Harwich Force, the Dover Patrol, and various other things. Who is largely written out from history because on the 31st of May 1916, his battlecruiser blows up in the Battle of Jutland because he's in command of the squadron of the Eyes, which all get sunk. Honestly, what's really annoying is he should have been made Vice Admiral. He was about due for his promotion to Vice Admiral not long after then, and he would have been a good Vice Admiral, a very good Vice Admiral. Could well have ended up finishing World War One as a full Admiral. And then you have a really interesting scenario, because if he's an Admiral at the end of World War One, you wonder if Beatty has as long a tenure as First Sea Lord as he does, or whether or not he gets supplanted by Hood at a certain point, because Hood would be a very good First Sea Lord. He's got a lot of political connections, he's got a lot of understanding, he's got a lot of knowledge. He's a unicorn officer, in that he has both the good at the politics and good at the naval side. He's also one of those officers who consistently gets given challenges through his career. Sort of a case of, at no point does someone turn around to Hood and go, you know what, you've done really, really well. I'm going to give you this really easy posting now. This, shining light where all you have to do is turn up and you'll get laurels because it will be so easy. No, it would be a case of Hood would go, Hood, Ryan, we have this problem. Where are you sending me? When? He also had married an American heiress. And, had children. Had children from her first marriage as well. He was independently wealthy. He didn't need to be a naval officer to have money. He also didn't need to be a naval officer before he married her. It's one of the things, and actually, he was actually quite well off, because the Hood family, it turns out, hadn't been stupid with their money when they won it in prize money and various other things. They'd actually invested and put it in properly. So he could have done a lot more than what he did. And he's like Admiral Craddock. They're both Rear Admirals who are lost in the beginning of World War One, and they're lost. Well, in Hood's case, he's lost in 1916. So that's definitely not the beginning of World War One, but before World War One is sort of halfway over almost. They are put in places and in positions where, frankly, you would think that the Royal Navy, even as large as it does, doesn't have such a surfeit of officers that it can afford to lose them in such a way. They're good at their jobs. This photo was taken in 1916. Alright, so let's go for the more famous Oh, I didn't expand that one, so I'll go back there. And I will expand it. And then I'll skip on. The Königsberg. Now, the Königsberg is this lovely little light cruiser that has fun in the Indian Ocean. And she manages to get in a fight, which is always a bad thing for a surface raider. I've said this in countless videos now, but I've always repeated. The worst thing for a surface raider to do is end up fighting a warship. Even when it totally outclasses, and let's be honest, a Pelorus class, which is an 1897 construct based on an 1889 construct, the Pearls, is not something which, frankly, the Königsberg, which is 1905, should sweat. She's 8 years younger, and the world has moved along a lot in those 8 years. Plus, she's a German-built ship, and because they're not getting quite the same quantity as the British, and she's a light cruiser, not a second-class protected cruiser, or even worse. She's should be a lot more protected and a lot more powerful. But she gets damaged. She gets her engine damaged. And rather like another German surface raider, she ends up taking refuge in her case, in a delta, their case in an estuary, the River Plate. This one in the Rufiji Delta. And they have to send the components, machinery, overland to Dar es Salaam for it to be repaired. And even then, it might not be repaired in time, as, well, HMS Chatham shows up. And she's a 1911 light cruiser, town class light cruiser. Starting to see a habit here? Yes, you beat up our little friend. It damaged you. Now we're the bigger friend. We're pissed off. We're here. And eventually she's joined by two of her sisters, one younger, one older, Dartmouth and Weymouth. So there's now 3 light cruisers sitting off there, each of which can take out Königsberg, using the same maths that she used to take out Pegasus. And they blockade the German ship in. And now starts the Royal Navy having a lot of problems dealing with a ship in harbour. Because it's in shallow water, which they can't get into. So they try to bombard it, they try to use air attacks on it, they try everything. They even get poor pre-dreadnought HMS Goliath out to blast away and have a go. Unfortunately, she doesn't have an 18-inch gun which can get 33 kilometers. Wait till we get to the Law of Clive class. What she does do is cause a lot of commotion. And all this time is going on, the Germans are digging in more and more and more and more. Getting more and more dug in. And they try to resupply her. They really do. They send out a ship which has a special crew selected because of their ability to speak Danish. Doesn't work that well for them. They don't get anywhere near where they need to go. Then they manage to drop their supplies off in German East Africa, and some of the supplies do get overland to Königsberg, but quite a lot of it ends up going towards the forces in Germany East Africa, trying to defend it against the British, going, we really quite like this area. Yes, I think we'll have it. The Germans don't want us to have it. Oh. Are they getting any supplies? No. Any reinforcements? No. Oh. That's a shame. So the Royal Navy sat there thinking, what do we have that could take out a German light cruiser and get over the sandbars and into the Delta without running aground themselves? The Humber class! As you can see, they have to make 2 attempts, but what's interesting here, please look at the picture, which is HMS 7 in bombarding position in Arab House Creek in the Refugee River Delta. On the 3rd of July 1917, during the Battle of the Königsberg, she's got port wings flooded to get extra elevation for the 6-inch guns. The after 6-inch gun is being loaded to bombard the railway loop trenches. They slowly work their way closer and closer and closer. So that was her on the 3rd of July. On the 6th of July, they force the Delta for the first time. They run the gauntlet with air support, with all the ships that are the fleet that's out there bombarding to support them. They run the gauntlet of prepared positions or defended positions and blast their way up as close as they get to the Königsberg. Now, their aim is to sit at about 10,000 yards from her, which is a sweet spot because their 6-inch guns can pummel away at her from there, but the Königsberg's guns cannot reach. However, unfortunately, they misjudge it. They get navigation error, so they actually get closer than 10,000 yards. HMS Mersey gets damaged. They engage in a gun duel. There is some light damage done to Königsberg, but nothing really massive. So they withdraw, and they come back again. And this time, they get it right. And she has our main armament taken out by 6-inch gunfire. And then they close so that all guns can bear. And at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, frigate captain Luff, or the commander, the captain of Königsberg, orders her sunk with using their own torpedo. The idea being that would stop her being turned into a war trophy. Honestly, by that point, there wasn't much of her left, though, to be turned into a war trophy. I'm not sure the British would have wanted that one. So, what have we got coming up? We've got February 11th, the Battles of Dogger Bank. This is Thursday, alive. February the 18th, Patron 16, the Royal Navy's strategic role in 1980s NATO, as suggested by Joseph Sullivan. February 25th, Patron 17, fast attack craft, i.e. torpedo U and gunboats in World War I Adriatic. Cool. Brew ships, hopefully on Valentine's Day. It's some more transactions in the Institute of Naval Architects and some new books. And long patrols, naval support for the Western Front, 1914-18. Battles of Dogger Bank, and Patron 16, the Royal Navy's strategic role in 1980s NATO. And guess what I'm going to say? I'm going to say that the first one in March is going to be a continuation of the naval support for the Western Front. It's going to be part 2. And then there's going to be part 3 in April. Because there's going to be each 3 parts on each 3 of these, and there's possibly going to be more when I look into the pre-dreadnoughts and other ships that get involved in it. But this is the starting point. So, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you found it interesting. And please do remember, if you do like these videos, please like them. Please maybe consider sharing them, subscribing, possibly pressing the little bell down there. And consider joining us Discord or, I don't know, helping out with purchasing or buying all my books on Patreon. Thank you and take care. I hope you enjoyed it.